Up there. Varla Ventura, everyone. We're going to love this show tonight. Why? Because it's Varla fucking Ventura. That's why. I know you love that. Oh, Varla, you love that. I know you do. Chris Mo, good to see you. And, what do you... I'm a cat if I don't drink IPA? Dude, everybody drinks IPA. Be different. You haven't tried anything until you tried Kokanee. Eric Files, how are you? Long Island Bigfoot, the gorgeous Anne Celine. Yeah, there we go. Now we can officially start because Anne is here. Eva. Remember, a great way to support this show is what J1 did. You know, the super chat is open. Another great way to support us is give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. And, hey, Rye, thank you for the super chat. Really do appreciate that. Varla Ventura coming on here in about 5 seconds. Sit tight. We're going to have one hell of a good show. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free for you by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Oh yes, she is back. Varla Ventura is the author of Varla Ventura's Paranormal Parlor, Ghost Seances, and Tales of True Hauntings. She is one of the best cryptid writers out there. Let's just be honest. Not a lot of cryptid writers actually have a real publisher. They're usually self-published or go by some unknown publishing company. Not Varla, though. No, she's like, I'm way too good for that. I am way too strong of a writer. And she's got killer teeth, too, by the way. She's got a great smile. And that's why she's in the big name publishing. She's all over bookstores across North America and around the world. She is that good. Why? Because she is one of the leading researchers and authors when it comes to everything spooky. Werewolves, vampires, witches, mermaids, fairies, pookas, changelings, and every Dracula in between. We're going to bring her on in a minute. Her website, varlaventura.net. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Miss Varla Ventura, always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio. How are you?
I'm delightful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. That might be the best introduction yet.
Oh, just warms my heart.
Dave.
Warms
so
my
good.
heart. You know, I actually have officially given up socks. It is that time of the year. I've been in shorts and a t-shirt all day. I was actually playing in the snow in my backyard today. I had a big bonfire going because I have a bunch of wood that I need to burn. I had this giant bonfire that went from about 9 in the morning until about 6 o'clock tonight, burning the death out of everything that's in the backyard right now. And I'm in shorts, and there's no bugs around. The mosquitoes are still a few weeks away. It was like heaven outside. Heaven. I've waited all winter for this moment, and I had it today.
It is bonfire season. It is just a perfect time. That's actually my tomorrow night plan, is to be out at a bonfire all night. And you're right, it's great because there's no bugs. Well, very few bugs, very few biting things. And yeah, where I am, it's like little Canada here. It's basically, it goes above 30 degrees and everyone's in shorts. Not me necessarily. I'm actually kind of morally opposed to shorts, but that's for another night.
Well, I can tell you this, okay? I can tell you this. It was about, I think it got up to about 68 degrees here today.
Ooh,
That is the perfect temperature right now. Perfect temperature. Old Dave doesn't sweat too much at that temperature, but it's still warm enough.
Sweet spot there. Yeah.
That's the sweet spot. That's the one where I just fall on the grass and stretch out like my dogs do. But even though my grass is still coated in snow.
A little damp.
Yeah, it's a little damp right now, but that's okay. That's okay. Varla, we always have new listeners tuning on in every day, really, and people may not have heard you before. How have you literally made yourself this beautiful career in writing about the monsters that scare us?
Well, I think, it's always important to write about things that you actually like or you are actually interested in. I think a lot of writers grow up hearing things like, write what you know. And for me, I grew up in an environment that was very cryptid friendly, let's just say. I grew up in a household with a mom who was very interested in the occult and fairy and folklore. And I just learned a lot of sort of the magical arts at a young age and was very exposed to this other way of thinking that I didn't realize was another way of thinking until I got older and realized that, other people actually go to church and stuff like that. Other people don't actually walk through the woods looking for fairy rings. We all know your listeners have probably done that a time or two. So I think just combining, something that I love to do, which is writing, with, writing about things that I find very interesting and kind of an infinite source, fairy, folklore, magical creatures. You really just can't go wrong. You learn something new every day. You hear new stories every day. So it's a very rich tradition to write about folklore. And it also marries really well with a love of travel. So I love to travel and I love to gather these stories anywhere I go. Ghost stories, people's encounters, all these kinds of things. Many, many things that, your listeners are into. So you combine all of those things. And then I also, combine a little bit of luck in there, where just kind of right place, right time with my first book with my publisher. And then that just sort of launched into not exactly a series, but a series of books that had a very similar aesthetic and kind of, matched that, the categories. So some of that was like luck, right? Got the first, if you can get the first one off the ground and it does decent, then you're more likely to get the second one. And then you just have to get someone to take a chance on that first one. So that's how I ended up with like 6 books on strange creatures and freaky facts and, scary stories.
Writing about it is one thing, experiencing is another. Out of all the things that you've written about, have you actually had experiences with some of these creatures?
Yes. I've had I would say of all of the things, I've had the most what I call paranormal experiences. So I've had the most sort of ghostly encounters throughout my life. I've had more than I can really count, and some profound, some kind of head scratchers, some very gentle and sweet. But I've also had a couple of, strange creature, woodland kind of interactions. I've had something creep about behind a tree at night one time when I was camping. I'll never know what that really was. And I once saw a very small little man-like creature under a plant when I was a kid, and I actually never knew what it was. It didn't scare me, but it kind of startled me. And I think later I realized it might have been something more like a leprechaun or a little, I actually think it was a leprechaun. But it didn't look at all like the Lucky Charms guy. So I didn't think it was, as a kid, I was like that I must have just made, you get older, you think you made it up until you start meeting people, reading books, doing research, and finding people who have had similar experiences or who describe, I found some old Irish folklore describing something much more, a leprechaun, but much more like this thing that I had seen. So, I think in my heart that still remains something that was a pivotal moment for me in terms of actually having a tangible experience beyond seeing, something kind of ghost-like or the spirit of a loved one or hearing someone say things. So, yeah, I've had a lot of strange experiences. I have never seen a mermaid. But I have had actually quite a few people tell me their mermaid encounters, especially after I wrote the book about my mermaid book. So it made me more of a believer, just kind of talking to sailors.
Probably the strangest creature that I have seen it happened about, oh goodness, my son was about 3. So 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. My son and I were going for a walk, and it was in late August, early September, and in that time of the year, you got to be really bear aware in my area because the black bears are out everywhere trying to get fat for the winter. And so we took this trail, so about a couple miles from my home where the studio is, I have this little lake around there. And so we decided we're going to go for a walk around the lake, and we're going to go geocaching because my son likes to geocache, and I kind of enjoy it too. And so I put him in his stroller, and he's like, "Dad, why do I have to be in my stroller? Because at 3, you're tough and not big enough for that,
Mm-hmm.
And I had to explain to him, well, because of bears and all that. I said, if we have to get away, the stroller is going to help us faster rather than Dad carrying you or you running by yourself. And he was cool with that. So we come up this hill, we find this geocache at the top of this knoll, and to the left of us is a drop, like a very steep graded drop down to the lake. And as we started to crest this knoll, coming up from the lakeside, there was this weird little creature about 18 inches high that looked like a rotted out 2x4. It was about this big. It had these little stringy arms and little legs. And he comes walking up from the lakeside, and I'm standing there, and I stop with my son's stroller, and I'm staring at this thing. And the one thing that I remember about it, Varla, is it was blurry.
Ooh.
It wasn't my eyes. It was just a tad blurry. But
Mm-hmm.
here's this piece of wood thing that's maybe 4 or 5 inches wide and 18 inches high with these little stubby legs and these little arms, and it comes walking on the trail. It stops, looks at me, and then takes off back down towards the lake, down the steep hill. And this whole incident happened and lasted maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds. So I said to my son, I said, "Did you see that?" And he's like, "See what, Daddy?" And he didn't see it, right? But it was the weirdest little thing. And I remember talking to a First Nations friend of mine, asking him, I said, what was that? Because if I have something weird like that, I usually try to go to First Nations people because they always seem to know. And he's like, well, that was probably a wood nymph that takes care of the forest, making sure that nothing is wrecked in the forest. He goes, there's a lot of them around British Columbia. So I was like, okay, cool, right? But, I mean, there's no way, like, the way it took off, there is no way my fat butt could have ever caught it. And this was about 20, 30 feet away from me and my son. So I don't know what the heck it was, man, but that was weird. That's I don't know whether it was little people, a wood nymph, it didn't look like a gnome, didn't have any pointy hat or overalls on. It was weird. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Well, it reminds me actually of a couple of sort of Eastern European stories about. Have you heard that story of the people who basically like this little? It's kind of like the Pinocchio origin story, where they essentially like they find this log in the woods and they sort of wrap it up, and he brings it home to his wife. They really want to have a baby, and for whatever reason they've never had a baby, so he finds this like stumpy little log in the forest, and he brings it home, and they wrap it up and they care for it and they sing to it, and it comes to life, and it's actually like the spirit of whatever this tree once was. And of course, there's horror versions of this story as well. And it was made into a very bizarre stop animation film by a Czech fellow named Jan Svankmajer, if anybody's ever heard of that guy. But it was called Little O-Tech. And of course, in that, the stump kind of takes over and tries to kill everyone. But there's a lot of stories about a spirit being in a tree, sometimes coming out. I've never heard anything quite described exactly like that, but certainly that there's countless woodland kind of creatures. And interesting that your friend called it a wood nymph, because I definitely think of fairies in that kind of the different categories. You have your wood nymphs, you have your water spirits, you have your kind of guardian spirits, you have your domestic ones that dwell in meadows, ones that live in the sea, and there's a lot of woodland ones in particular. So sounds pretty cool. I mean, I don't think many people actually see things like that, and I think there's a variety of reasons why, but I think that to see something like that, that's certainly a gift, and it sounds like you startled it as much as it startled you.
Oh yeah, it was weird. It was totally weird, and I don't know if I would ever be able to see one of those again. It's just how do you
even if you wanted to, that's the kind of thing you'll never be able to invoke. Although we could try.
Right.
We could go out in the forest and, do a little ritual or something and, leave it something nice.
Well, I would hope so. What do you leave it? I've never been back there. It's weird. I've never been back there since then. And it's not that the creature scared me, but I was done geocaching that area, so I have no reason to go back. To be blunt.
You should go back there. I'd be curious what would happen if you went back there.
I don't know. Now, for you mentioned earlier that you talked to, when you wrote the Mermaids book, you talked to a lot of sailors that came to you and talked to you about mermaids. Tell me a few of those stories. What's it like interviewing someone who comes up to you and says, I've seen that?
Yeah, well, it's actually very interesting because I think you get a lot of people who believe in ghosts, Bigfoot, fairy creatures even. But when it comes to mermaids, people have a hard time, even, the witches and pagans have a hard time saying that they really truly believe mermaids are real or once were real. And I found that very interesting because it seemed like there was a real kind of cutoff point. But at the same time, mermaids are the most revered of the magical creatures. And that, like, for example, that book has outsold all my other books by 3 times because it's about mermaids and they have a little bit more of a universal appeal. So when I was writing that book, I reached out to, just on shows and on my website and kind of put a call out asking people to share their mermaid stories with me. And I honestly didn't get very many responses. I had to actually put it out 2 or 3 times. And finally, I got a couple responses. One was a very beautiful story of a Aboriginal Australian woman shared with me about the sort of how they believe that mermaids dreamed them into existence, and that mermaids dwell in what is called the dream time. And they have this wonderful relationship with mermaids, that mermaids will leave them gifts and will help them with their catch and the abundance that they can gather from the sea and the medicine they can get from the sea. And in exchange, they keep the beaches clean, they leave gifts for the mermaids, and they kind of, are the guardians of that bay. The humans are. So that was a real cool story. I also had a woman write to me and tell me a story about being in she was somewhere down in the Bahamas, and she was staying in one of those huts that's kind of like out above the water, and actually woke up in the night and saw this creature hovering in her little, in her room. And she actually sent me a picture of it. It was male. It had sort of reddish hair and glowing eyes, and appeared to be kind of fish-like, but it was also very kind of ethereal at the same time. And she had this, like, kind of woke up, looked at it, was quite confused, and then fell back asleep and thought, oh, I just dreamt that. And when she woke up in the morning, there was actually like a puddle in her room from where she thought this creature had been standing. And her mom, who was also in the room with her, had some kind of had a similar experience, but hadn't quite seen the same thing. But they didn't talk about it until like the next day at breakfast. One just kind of brought it up, and they said, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, oh, yeah, I saw something weird. I couldn't sleep right around that time. That was probably the most clear picture someone had actually seen something, and, was as well described as someone who's had, an encounter like you had with the little twig guy. We should, like, little board man or whatever you want to call him. But then as far as sailors go, so I have a number of friends who have lived on the sea or lived, in sailboats or grown up in sailboats. And one of my close friends, her mother was they lived on the sailboat together, and her mother was one of the sailors. And she told me a story, more than one story. But one night I was on the radio talking about when the Mermaid book had come out. And she called me the next day and she said, okay, I need to tell you this thing that happened to me. And it was a mermaid story. It was they were kind of coming into the harbor, and the fog had come in very quickly. And it was, it was a little bit of like a boating community. And it was one of those situations where people more or less knew who was at what dock. And everyone kept hearing this song. They were hearing this voice. They were hearing these like kind of calls, and no one could quite figure out what it was. They couldn't tell if it was an animal. But then later, everyone in the community kind of talked about it, and everyone had kind of heard the same thing. And this was a community of people who had been living in this area for quite a long time and were familiar with a lot of the songs and sounds of the sea. And they all were convinced that it was mermaids, and that one of the people had trouble getting back into the harbor because the fog had come in so quickly. And because of that sound, they were actually able to figure out where they were. So you hear that, the tale of the sirens, even in the Odyssey, where their voices are bouncing off the rocks and kind of trying to lure you toward the rocks. But I've also heard these kind of stories where the mermaids can kind of help guide you away into into safe passage. So, I've had a few stories like that, people who have spent a lot of time at sea, mostly hearing things, not so much seeing.
Interesting. You know what? Already we're done the first half hour of tonight's show. Unbelievable how fast this is going. And when we come back, I want to go into the forest, because since we're talking about dark things in the forest, let's talk about some weird creatures, along with, I want to get into these weird stairways and doors that seemed to be
yeah.
standing in the middle of the forest. Would you open it? Would you walk up the stairs? I don't know if I would, and I'm pretty ballsy that way. We'll be back with the great Varla Ventura, varlaventura.net, coming up on Spaced Out Radio right after this. Varla Ventura.
Now we can cuss.
Now we can cuss. Yes, now we can cuss.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have children listening,
I always mark these
Prepare
not
them.
for children.
yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just us children, just us immature folk.
Yes. Oh, Jenny has a good question. I'll save that for the show. And
Okay.
there's already a bunch of good questions coming out for you.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna tell you that I was listening to Joe Diamond's show, so I was listening live, and love Joe Diamond, and I was trying, so I couldn't figure out. You said join us on the YouTube chat, and I was on my phone. I mean, I was like in bed listening on my phone, and I could not figure out how to get. I know how to get the chat on YouTube like on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know how to chat, and I know how to get YouTube on my phone, and I had the app and everything, and I could not figure out how to chat. And then I just got really tired and wanted to just listen. So I failed.
That's
the
okay.
interaction.
You know what?
Yeah.
He is a great dude.
Yeah. He
Joe-
is a great dude.
Joe is
We love him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, thanks for the recommendation there. And
he's great.
I mean, I really enjoyed him. I really enjoyed everything about what he was doing and what he was saying, and
He's so unique.
Yeah.
He's just not like everyone else, and yet he's got this like dynamic appeal. I met him. Let's see. Actually, he invited me. He used to have a radio show on the in Wisconsin on like the whatever Wisconsin Public Radio. That's how I first met him. He invited me on his radio show, and we just kept corresponding after that. And then eventually his radio show, he stopped doing that, but he was doing all of his live shows. And then he contributed a story actually to my most recent book, and it's all about this haunted tarot. It's a great story. And we've just, I've seen him live a few times, and he's always been a big supporter for me, which is really nice. So, he's just
he's
great.
amazing.
You can see his Zoom show, and you can, if you ever get a chance to see him live.
I would love to. That damn 9 of clubs that he pulled on me.
I know. He made you cuss like on air. It was so awesome. I have a nail that he put through his nose, and then wrote my name on and gave it to me at his live show.
Ew.
I mean, he put it in a bag and sealed it and gave it to me.
It's got nose goblins on it.
That was cool. Yeah, but they're Joe Diamond's nose goblins.
Joe Diamond nose goblins.
It's like sparkly little diamonds on there.
He's the kind of guy I would totally see in Vegas.
Yeah, he would do great there. Yeah, we should invite him when we meet.
Yeah.
We should see if Joe wants to go.
For sure. For sure. If the border ever opens. Getting sick of this damn COVID stuff.
I know.
Hold on. Dirty Filth. By the way, Dirty Filth, when you say Dave says ooh, but has a bag of beards, that just reminds me. Do you guys remember Science Bob's beard? Look what I got. Science Bob's beard.
People send you their beards?
I've got 5 beards in my
didn't know
studio.
that.
Yeah. Science Bob's beard right there. So that's going up on the collection. I have my friend Bruce's beard. I have our listener Joe Monk's beard. I have Science Bob's beard, and I got 2 of my beards in here.
What a beardo.
I'm a total beardo.
But you know what? That's a good point. You're grossed out by a nail that went in someone's nose, but you have bags of beards. So
Yeah, but that's nose goblins. Boogers. Boogers.
yeah. What are you going to do with all those beards?
I'll probably burn them one day.
Yeah.
Throw them in the garbage, something like that. I'm just not ready to get rid of them. I thought about starting to tack them up on my walls.
Just have like a beard collection.
Yeah. Yeah, why not? You know, one day I'll put them on eBay. Everybody buys everything off of eBay. So I'll just put them on eBay. Science Bob's beard.
Science Bob's beard. Just
exactly.
And put like a super high price tag on it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
$7,000 and see
absolutely. I'll sell it as one of those NFTs. Hold on, Varla. Thank you, Rye Guy and J1 for the super chat. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Going to start here right now. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us in. You know what? I honestly have the greatest job in the world doing this show. Talking monsters and weird stuff all night long. I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that. Well, I mean, it could, like if I had like a couple $1 million in the bank. But, you know, by the way, if you're listening on Saga 960, thank you so much for tuning in, first off. But earlier on today, I was on with Mark Petroni talking UFOs. So you might want to go back to the replay and listen to that because we got some good stuff coming up in UFOs and the UFO world here coming very soon. But Varla Ventura is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. And we love her around here. She talks all weird stuff about monsters and everything like that. Her website, varlaventura.net. You can find all of her books at any major or minor bookstore because she's that good. You know what? She's so good, she's got the rounded glasses. She's got the Harry Potter type glasses going on. Varla, I know we're going to get to...
Only you can see.
I know. One day soon, I guarantee you the next time you're on, you're going to be on video with our audience on YouTube.
So much pressure.
It is going to be pressure.
I had to Google kokanee beer.
It's fantastic.
So, now I know what it is, and it looks delicious.
Kokanee beer, but the key to kokanee beer is you literally have to drink it ice cold. So, like, if it starts to warm up a little bit, it's not as good. But when it is, like, ice cold, it is like heavenly water going down your throat.
I thought you were going to say the key to kokanee beer is to drink it with you.
That too. That too. Yes. Anybody wants to drink kokanee beer with me, we can definitely arrange something once this COVID crap is over. All right. Can we talk some monsters? We're going to get to the doors and the stairways and weird stuff in the forest here coming up. But I want to get to Jenny's question right off the bat here. And she's like, Varla, have you ever heard of the Cannibal Mermaids in Alaska?
Ooh, I haven't heard of cannibal mermaids in Alaska specifically. However, I have heard of cannibalistic mermaids in Irish mythology. Actually, there's quite a few terrifying tales of mermaids who, in fact, there's one story about a woman or a mermaid who tricks a guy, kind of having her getting rescued by this guy, and she says, well, if I don't get into the sea in time, my husband will eat my babies. And that led me down this rabbit hole of looking into kind of that dark side of mermaids and them threatening. Usually they're more threatening toward humans, but I don't know about the ones in Alaska. So I'd love to know more if she wants to give a little more info there.
Well, we'll find out. Alaska's just weird. It's weird like Ohio.
It is weird like Ohio. You know, this is not mermaid related, but I did interview one of the paranormal investigators in Alaska, one of the lead paranormal investigators several years ago, and one of the stories she told me that really haunted me was about these black dogs that people see at the beginning, the openings of mines. And it's really common in Alaska to see these sort of like black hellhound type dogs, which interestingly, again, just going back to Cornwall and parts of Britain and Irish folklore, as well as throughout the United States and Canada, where you have a lot of mines, you actually have a lot of these similar sightings of these kind of hellhounds or demon dogs. Sometimes I think they might cross over into that Pooka shapeshifter. They're a little bit of a guardian. They might be a little bit of a warning, to stay away from the mind. But of course that protects, that's a portal into the earth, right? Where all the gnomes dwell. So it's always good to have a little guardian there to keep you from going too far into the darkness.
Speaking of small creatures, Donuts, who is new to our chat room, wants to know if there's any news stories about Puck Wedgies.
Oh, I haven't heard any recent ones. I have a good friend who runs the New England Ghost Project. His name is Ron Kolek, and he's always keeping me up to date on the Puck Wedgies. He's actually the person that introduced me to them, and he says them much more fabulous than I do because he's got his New England pronunciation, so it's way better. So I haven't heard any recent ones, but I have heard of the Puck Wedgies, and they're essentially kind of small-ish, imp-ish, goblin-y creatures that go back pre-contact. They go back prior to the colonies. The indigenous people talk about these Puck Wedgies and these kind of. It's a similar thing as you see in a lot of the Irish lore, where there's a sort of respect and reverence, but not necessarily a super friendly relationship. Like it's kind of, a healthy respect for people kind of staying on their side of the path and letting the Puck Wedgies exist in their part of the forest.
All right. Speaking of forests, let's get into our weird discussion. There are people all around the world who claim, whether it's true or not, I have no idea because I've never come across it, and I don't know anybody who's come across it, but they claim seeing these weird stairways or doors sitting in the middle of the forest where there was no construction, there was no foundation to a house or anything along those lines. And the legends have it you never are supposed to open the door, or you're never supposed to go up to the top stairs. Tell us about these legends. Why are we not allowed to enter or go up the stairs?
I feel like I would. I'm kind of a hot stove toucher. I feel like I would open the door personally. But when I first heard of these, it immediately brought to mind these portals into the fairy realm. And just to clarify, when I'm talking about the fairy realm, I'm kind of talking about the other world, like the underworld, right? I'm not necessarily talking about this like place where these magical little sparkly things land and hang out in your garden. There are fairies that hang out in the garden, but I'm also talking about the sort of greater kingdom of fairy, which is also the equivalent of the underworld or another world, especially in Celtic mythology. It's very similar to what you might see in a lot of even Greek mythology, the idea of this whole kind of like reverse or flip world where there are specific ways that you can enter it. And often, like in Ireland, there are fairy forts everywhere. And they're basically places where there are formations of rocks that form kind of a doorway. Again, we were just talking about mines as this kind of portal. I've also seen beautiful illustrations of a island in the middle of a lake, and in the middle of that island is a rock, and in the middle of that rock is a door. And you open that door and you go into this other world, into this fairy world. So when I first heard about these kind of these doors and these stairs that people were seeing, that was one of my first thoughts, is that it matches a lot of this, especially old Celtic mythology about just there being a door. You'll see fairy doors on trees all the time. You'll see sort of a formation in a tree, and it looks like you could just stick a doorknob on it and pop it open. I have one in my town, actually, that I walk by all the time, and it's not in my yard. But boy, do I want to just see what would happen if I put a little doorknob and turned a key. It's a very Alice in Wonderland type situation. So that, I think, with the doors, that makes a lot of sense. The stairs, on the other hand, because the stairs are going up, right? Stairs aren't going down. If the stairs were going down, that maybe would be a little bit creepier. But these stairways, I mean, it's almost as if you're just getting this like glitch of a view of some kind of other place that's there, but you can't see it. And, would I go, probably the main hesitation with the stairs would just be like, is my foot just going to like fall through them and I'm going to like gash my leg open? I'd be less concerned about transporting to another dimension and more concerned about like the physical realities of climbing a craggy old stairway in the middle of the forest. But I would certainly consider it. But here's the thing, Dave. Have you actually met anyone who's seen one? Because I've seen them on the internet and I've seen people talking about it on the internet, but I've never met anyone who's actually encountered it other than people who have, encountered kind of old ruins walking or whatever. But I've never met anyone who's just actually encountered one of these. I've just seen a lot of people talking about it in forums and stuff. So I'd love to actually talk to someone who's seen one.
I haven't.
And if they got like a creepy feeling from it or,
Yeah. Like I can understand these stairways and these doorways or stairwells and these doorways if there was like an old cabin. I mean, look, it's nothing in the British Columbia forest to be in the middle of nowhere on a mountain, where you're literally 5, 6, 10 miles from any road and come across a cabin that's all worn out, an old, prospector's shack or something along those lines. They're scattered.
Totally.
They really are.
Right.
I would have no problem going in there. Or if you saw like the walls down or at least saw some of the framing or foundation or something, then it makes sense that it would be there. But when you just see these things, I haven't met anybody either who has seen these. It's always those friend of a friend type of folklore stories. Yeah, but still, it's enough to make you wonder, and it's definitely I feel like the doorway might be even more common, but I don't know. I mean, that is just a great question, and you always have your thought of the day, and I know you already got your thought of the day out there, but that's a great question for people. Like, would you open that doorway? It's actually a wonderful writing prompt if you think about it. You're walking through the forest and you see a stairway. You walk up it. What happens? Or do you walk up it? It's like a choose your own adventure. What happens when to open this doorknob? What's on the other side? But it does definitely spark the imagination, and it brings to mind a lot of old tales of, these kind of portals and entrances into this other realm. This other realm that we're all so curious about, but it's quite difficult to access. What's supposed to happen? Are we supposed to get bad luck? Are we supposed to walk into a different dimension? Are we supposed to, trip and fall with our shoelaces tied? What's supposed to happen?
If you go so interestingly, when you look at the fairy kingdom more as like the underworld, and especially, so I'll just speak from like personal experience. The last time I was in Ireland, I visited one of multiple caves that claim to be the portal where Halloween the Halloween began. This is a wonderful thing about Ireland is that Samhain, the tradition, the Celtic tradition of what we now has evolved into what we call Halloween. There are like 6 or 7 places that claim to be the first place that celebrated it, which is yet another reason to love Ireland. But one of the places that I visited was this cave. It's called like the Cave of the Cats. And it's kind of right in the middle part of Ireland. And it's not one of the big towns or tourist attractions. It's a little bit under the radar. And actually got to go out there with a really cool local archaeologist who had studied a lot about cave formations and, had actually minored in like medieval castle history or something. So he's a really interesting guy. And he had he knew a lot of the Celtic mythology specific to that area. And he was it actually really opened my eyes to that idea of just not only just the underworld, but I saw a lot of parallels with other indigenous cultures, where this cave was a place that you went into to make contact with the fairy kingdom, to make contact with the other world. And it's also a sensory deprivation area, right? So it's like a place that you go and you go into trance, or you might go there seeking something. And so again and again, when you open these doors, when you go through these portals, it's frequently on some kind of quest. Now, once upon a time, in the beginning of, the like Celtic origin stories, you have these encounters with the other world and the heroes, and they're going on these quests. They're entering through a door. They're seeking some kind of knowledge, some kind of answer, guidance, luck in the battle, whatever it is. And you have that kind of hero quest. But as time goes by, you kind of evolve that into the moral. So frequently it's, some drunkard's walking down the street and he really should have been home hours ago, and he encounters a Pooka, and the Pooka kind of, takes him on this mad ride and tortures him. And then the next day he sobers up and realizes that, the error of his ways. So you see this kind of recurring thing. But a lot of times what happens is if you go into this other realm, you lose complete track of time. So it's not unlike an alien abduction. You'll just get like completely not present, and yet you will be completely aware of everything that's going on around you, and then you'll return to the regular time and regular world, and more time will have passed than you had realized. You've lost your shoes. You have kind of been under this sort of spell or enchantment, and that's kind of what the fairy, like what happens when you go through these portals. You're kind of transported into an enchanted realm.
Can you come back?
You can come back. You're never quite the same. And some people say that if you do come back, you gain the second sight. And so there are stories of one I was actually just reading the other night about this woman who went through a portal. She actually on purpose went through the portal, went and sought out the fairies, was looking for some kind of magical guidance, went through the portal, went to the fairy realm. They tried to keep her there by plying her with liquor and food and other substances. She escaped, and ever since then, she was able to spot fairies. So there's a description of her sort of like moving through the fair, and she can see, what vendor is actually a fairy vendor and who's human. And so some say you can actually gain the second sight. You can gain psychic powers from the fairies.
Wow.
Cool, right?
What is that second sight?
Second sight is the ability to see other things that people can't see, to see the invisible, to detect fairies, to have that sort of that third eye open, to see ghosts, to hear the banshee. All of those things are considered the second sight, and it's actually a gift. It's a psychic gift, right? It's an ability that a lot of people have but don't tap into, and you can use it mostly for good. You could probably use it to your own advantage frequently, and depending on where your loyalties lie, you could potentially even use it for evil.
And what are your loyalties, Varla Ventura?
My loyalties lie with you, Dave.
Yes. I appreciate that. Let's get to a question from the audience here. Dirt Road wants to know, as we got about 5 minutes to go until the top of the hour, could you explain to us the powers of Lilith?
Oh, Lilith. Well, she's a wonderful goddess. who's quite misunderstood, I think. She frequently is equated with the devil, but most witches revere her. She's particularly prominent in Jewish mythology as sort of being this vampire goddess, or being, sometimes I think she's misrepresented as being a vampire or someone who really kind of like draws on the energy of others. But in reality, she's a very powerful goddess who can enchant and can control. And, you know, we all know what happens when you get like women in power who can enchant and control. And men just want to kill them. And so they turn them into devils. But most people most witches that I know respect Lilith, and she's particularly popular among the vampire crowd because she has some vampiric qualities. She loves the night. She's a creature of the night. Some stories say that she likes to drink blood. That can also just be a way of keeping, you know, if you want to keep people from burning your house down, you've got to make them afraid of you. So you can kind of create these stories to keep people at bay.
With Lilith, you mentioned that many people in many cultures consider her to be, you know, teamed up with Beelzebub himself. Why do witches love her if she is demonic to some?
Well, see, you've just said something very very ironic and somewhat contradictory, because witches do not believe in the devil. So therein lies the issue right there. There was a time when even fairies, you know, people believe that witches can commune with fairies, and there's was a time when that was not considered good versus evil, but sort of like the wild ways versus the you know, daytime, you know, the night versus the day. And so the idea of hell and demons and the devil himself came with Christianity. Witchcraft predates that. So anytime you have many cultures have goddesses that are equated with sort of that dark side. And eventually, you know, that's going to be called the devil. That's just kind of how it goes. You even find that in Celtic mythology. You can see as Ireland is being more Christianized over time, as you can see how the stories evolve and how they begin to suit the doctrine of the church versus the original story. A lot of them have the same morals, you know, don't go play in the bog, you'll sink, there's bad, you know, there's tides and mermaids out there. A lot of them have some of the same purposes, but they, you know, there's a overlying kind of moral, Christian moral that has been superimposed upon a lot of those original beliefs. I mean, that's right. That's a story as old as colonization.
I'm not that old. My beard may look that old, but I am not that old. Let me tell you.
Maybe when we met back in the 1600s, that's how it went down. Not sure.
Did we meet in the 1600s?
We might have, you know.
Yeah, we may have.
Maybe you saved me from a pyre.
Yes, I brought my bucket of water to put out the flames.
Yes, you did. You get your big jug there, so.
Mm-hmm. I carried around my axe in order to chase away anybody who tried to spear me. Oh, yeah, that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Varla Ventura is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. And I know in our audience, in our chat rooms tonight, we have a lot of questions that are coming up. Oof. We have a lot of questions. So I'm going to get everybody to kind of hold back a little bit until we get through the commercial break at the top of the hour. Then repost your questions. I promise you I will get them to Varla, including Hellboy, because somebody wants to know about Hellboy. Do you believe in Hellboy? I don't know. Well, the only thing I thought was Hellboy was a movie a long time ago.
I know. That's what came to mind for me, too.
Yes. I don't know. But we appreciate you coming on the show as you do every couple of months here, Varla Ventura. and your gorgeous teeth. Yeah, she has perfect teeth. I wish I had nice teeth like that. Really do. VarlaVentura.net is her website. You can go to any major bookstore to pick up her books as well because she is published that way. Your questions, if you're in the audience, and more creepy cryptid talk with the queen of the cryptids, Varla Ventura, and Our Strange World here on Spaced Out Radio. All right, Varla Ventura, I'm just going to run my dogs outside. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
Bear with me.
Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/spacedoutradio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
Hi, Varla Ventura. Hi, YouTube.
Oops, I'm muted. Hey.
Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
All right. Mondak, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Who else we got here? That's new in the chat room. I think that's it. Foreigner, Israelite, welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Welcome to our chat room. Thank you for joining us. Chris, what's going on? Thank you for joining us. Stetson John, good to see you. Good time now to put in your questions, if you have questions. Gary Vermeer, the Dutchman. How are you? Mighty Moose Beard Oil, everyone. Go to mightymoosebeard.com. Check it on out. Magnus for Magnuson. What's happening? Oh, thank you, Vinster Barbarino, for the super chat. Appreciate that. Same as you, Dirty Filth, Rye Guy, and J1. Thank you. Appreciate the super chats and the love that you guys got for our show. It's a great way to support what we do. And, yeah. Thank you to everybody who's hit that subscribe button recently. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the thumbs up, thumbs down. The Ronald Penton is here, everyone. The Ronald Penton. All right, we got like 30 seconds here, Varla.
I was having emoji issues.
Oh, yes. Bugs me every time.
Yeah, it was this thing in the corner was trying to make me give you an emoji, and I didn't want to give you an emoji.
I don't want an emoji. Hi, Michael Lestuca. All right, we got 5 seconds, Varla. Hold on.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Second hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Twyforked. Twyforked is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Varla Ventura. She is one of our great guest that comes on every couple of months for a feature that we call Our Cryptid World. You can find her books all over the internet, all over bookstores around North America and the world. VarlaVentura.net is her website. Varla, welcome back.
Why, thank you.
You're very, very welcome.
I never left. And I didn't leave. It's here all along.
No, that's absolutely awesome. We appreciate that. You always like the weird, strange little creatures, gnomes, fairies, pookas, changelings, things like that. You know, these are very obscure type of beings that are really found anywhere. In North America, what kind of strange little creatures should we be paying more attention to?
Well, excuse me, I would say that people probably have more close to their house than they realize. I mean, I think I would pay attention if you're losing a lot of things besides your mind, but especially if you're losing objects that you know you've put somewhere and you have misplaced. I think that sometimes we think that we might be haunted, and we may have a small fairy-like goblin or something in our house. not dismissing that you may be haunted. That can also be the case. But a lot of the signs can be very similar. Missing objects, things kind of moved around in your house, things seeming sort of out of place, occasionally, pinches or bruises or scratches on your body that you can't account for, things kind of that nature. But I would say people should probably be more aware of, as there are 2 times of the year when the veil is quite thin and creatures can kind of pass through and they run amok more frequently. The first, of course, is Halloween. We all know that. But also coming up is the Eve of May. And that is a very, very magical night. And it's a night when the veil can be quite thin. That's the very last day of April, just at going into the first, the holiday of Beltane. And it's a time when traditionally you would burn a bonfire. You would burn a bonfire to sort of burn away any of the negativity or hauntings or bad luck of the winter and enter into the, kind of official beginning of summer and the planting season. And then you would have this giant bonfire, and you take those ashes and you scatter those in the fields where you're going to plant your seeds for the following year, for that following harvest. And during that time, because the veil is thin, you can encounter all kinds of things. In particular, elves, goblins, Pookas are very wild that night. All kinds of shape-shifting creatures. Some mythology talks about multi-headed werewolves and vampire-like creatures that can be released on these nights. So I think we think about, it's spring and it's nice and it's beautiful and there's flower fairies and everything's going to be great because, there's beauty. But with that comes also a lot of mischief. And so there's quite a few, by and large, the fairy kingdom isn't evil or out to get you, with a few exceptions. By and large, you just have a lot of mayhem and mischief, which, humans can handle, right? That's kind of what we're responsible for. But there are a lot of little beings out there, especially as we approach that Eve of May. So as we approach the end of April and we're getting into the beginning of May, and we enter into Beltane, especially at the stroke of midnight, which I think it's a weeknight, so you'll probably be doing a show that night. Just be aware. There's a lot of little things out there. It's also a time that you can commune with spirits, and you can actually connect with deceased loved ones as well. That's a very traditional belief that you would. It's not just on Halloween night that you connect with the dead.
I gotta ask before we get to a couple of audience questions. This time of year, we're getting very much into spring up where I am. I know other places across the continent have been in spring for like a month. Not me.
No, not me either.
Not me.
Remember, I'm in little Canada.
Exactly.
Baby Canada here.
Yes. So I'm actually going to be buying some trees this year for my garden. I'm going to put some shrubs in front of my house because I like shrubs.
Right.
And they look good.
I support.
Yeah. But a lot of people build fairy gardens. A lot of people put garden gnomes out. And a lot of people have no idea that these little creatures actually potentially use those, or appreciate that type of respect, if we could use that word. How real are the fairies and the garden gnomes? And are they pleased when you build them a little bit of a memorial or a little bit of a home or something to show that you're proud to have them in your yard?
Yeah, like a bit of a sanctuary, really. Oh, they're quite pleased. And there's actually, there's a lot of evidence to show that if you are leaving something in offering and you're creating this kind of little sanctuary, that you will have a more abundant garden. Some of that is mindset, right? It's being conscious and sort of dedicating a space. Some of that is science, you are creating something that will also attract pollinators. So your garden is going to be, because if you're creating a little sanctuary and you've got certain kind of flowers that attract bees and you've got water for the bees and the frogs, you're going to also create this sort of abundance in your garden naturally because of botany. So some of it is that, but also there's that healthy reverence and respect. And whether that means that you're in nature and you're leaving some kind of offering and you're cleaning up trash, or in your own garden, in your own space, you're dedicating something to, and asking, hey, will you look out for my garden? That's why people have statues of garden gnomes. They're guardians. They're there to protect the garden. They're there to ward off those nasty little squirrels that try and dig up all of your bulbs. So there's a practicality to it, and you see those little figurines that are carved or made of stone, and they're representations of these creatures and fairy and folklore, and they're there to either protect your household, protect your children, protect your garden.
All right, let's get to a question from Focus. Varla, do you think some of these cryptids are the cause of the missing 411 phenomena?
Oh, well, maybe. I mean, it could. I think that there's some parallels between people going missing in these old stories that are sort of, these old fairy stories where someone turns up 6 days later, and this kind of like 411 phenomenon. I wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder if we're telling the same stories just in a different time, right? Like these same things have been happening to people throughout time, right? As long as we've been telling stories and we've been recording history in some fashion, but now we have this other way of sharing information. So we're talking about it on midnight radio shows. Used to be something that we talked around the campfire and warned each other of. So these kind of like just drawing that parallel in the kind of full circle, abductions or disappearances or unexplained absences or time lapses were once explained as the Pooka, were once explained as accidentally stumbling into a fairy ring and falling through a portal. So are they the same thing, or are they different things? To me, I see so many parallels that, I think they're it's very likely it's the same thing. It's just we're calling it something different.
All right. Kira is asking, what creature looks like a fuzzy Ewok-like being? Is that the Pooka? No, that would be the Puck Wedgie, would it not?
Puck Wedgies are a little more fuzzy. Pookas usually appear the Pookas are kind of shapeshifters, so they can appear a little bit more like impish or goblin-like, but typically are more like a horse or a rabbit, and occasionally a dog or an eagle or something like that, but it's usually like an animal. So if it's a small creature that looks like an animal, it also could be like a little hobgoblin. So there's a lot of domestic little goblins. A lot of people think of goblins and they might think something like really particularly evil, or they, I guess in the Harry Potter stories, they guard all the money and stuff like that. But goblin is actually a word that has a Welsh origin, and it's equivalent to coblin, goblin. There's a lot of different variations on that, and in those you have a lot of the domestic sort of house fairies that like to take care of livestock and hang out in your kitchen and help scrub your floor if you leave it like a nice cake. So it could be something like that. I mean, I always think of the Gremlin movie and those terrifying little things that...
Don't pour water on them.
No, don't pour water on a gremlin. Whatever you do.
Goddess Michelle, by the way, on Twitter cannot...
Yay!
She's not listening tonight. She's going to catch the podcast version of this. She is working very hard in her seniors home care facility because she is a nurse in the beautiful province of Halifax. So she apologizes that she can't be here tonight for you.
But as you're listening, just know that we love you, Goddess Michelle, and thank you for all you do.
Yes. She's a hero among many heroes that are helping during this troubling time right now. So we absolutely love it. All right, let us go to, we don't have any questions from our audience just right now, but let's go, since we're dealing in the forest, we're talking about all of these, goblins and trolls and everything like that. I mean, today people look at trolls as what we see on internet, and I think we all have trolls that kind of stalk us online, and no matter what we do...
Stupid jerks.
Yeah, no matter what we do, we're going to get put down and absolutely slagged on the internet. That's the way it is these days. So, heck, why not, right? Why not? Just let it go through. But in reality, there's still a lot of people from the Chestnut Ridge all the way around the world who believe there are still trolls living under bridges and walkways.
Yes. Well, okay, so I always thought that trolling on the internet was more like we use that word because of like when you're out in a boat and you're trolling and you're trying to like fish for things. So I never really thought of it as actual trolls until you said that. I don't know why. I just thought of like trolling and fishing and like trying to fish for, a comment or reaction. Yes. Trolls are totally awesome, and they're definitely, again, another misunderstood creature. They are complete guardians. They don't really like people, and so they get this reputation for being grumpy, but they're really just more elusive, and they're they're set. You hear the story of the Billy Goat's Gruff is like the most famous troll, right? There's this troll that's under the bridge. But you know what that troll's doing? It's making sure that people pass over the bridge safely. That troll doesn't necessarily stop people unless they've got some kind of like sketchy business. But very interestingly, again, I think this owes a lot to word origins and then things being lost in translation, because we're talking about words that are, they're used in Norse countries, they're used the Gaelic in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, which is very different in each of those regions. Then you've got English, you've got German, you've got the Romani languages, all mixing together, and we're trying to kind of name these things. And there's a story, I actually included it in my fairy book, and I included it because it was so strikingly different about trolls, and it described these trolls in Scandinavia who are actually very tall, sort of ephemeral, angelic-like beings, very light in kind of coloring and appearance. And they basically, dwell in the mountains and in the mountaintops and the forests. And you always hear these stories of these trolls being kind of these like somewhat ugly creatures. This was the first time that I had seen trolls described as these sort of beautiful, very ethereal creatures. So, trolls can be beautiful, apparently, especially in Scandinavia. And there's all of these cool stories where trolls are in the hillside, and they're kind of overlooking the sheep, and therefore they are tied in with wool, and the process of turning the wool and also into kind of like creating and knitting things. So there's a lot of belief that as you're creating something, that there's this sort of spirit in it. So if you're making like these mittens to keep somebody warm, you're taking this magical spirit and you're putting it in there in order to keep someone from getting frostbitten. It's really, really quite sweet, I thought.
Well, that is nice.
Yes, it's the sweetest troll in literature.
Well, isn't that nice? All right, let us go to another question here. This one comes from Justin. Varla, do you believe thorns and red berries bring negative fairies? I took a group pic near a holly tree one night, and it had fairies all around it. 5 deaths followed in the next month.
Human deaths? Wow. Well, I've never really tied those things together. I do think that when you see red and orange and really, really bright colored berries and things in nature, those are usually a warning sign that those things are poisonous. Holly berries are poisonous. Red cap mushrooms are typically poisonous. Bright orange mushrooms are typically poisonous. So I think there's a lot of parallels with the plant lore and the sort of poison plants and fairies. For example, you have the digitalis, which are also known as foxgloves, and those are highly toxic. That's a plant that's sacred to the fairies that you're not supposed to go and touch and mess around with. So holly is one of those plants, and certainly is equated with fairies because it has very, very strong, because it's toxic, it also has very, very strong medicinal properties. And any plant that has strong medicinal properties is a magical plant, basically. But I have never heard of that specifically causing death. The main stories I've heard about with fairies and death is just sort of like the banshee and the sound of death, or someone being scared to death, but not anything where they would that's kind of terrifying. I hope no one ate. I'm assuming no one ate the holly.
I hope not.
But the question was really about like thorny plants and things like that. And so there you do see. Actually, that's the book I'm working on now, is about the connection between fairy and folklore and botany, and what is happening when you're reading a story and there's this incredible thorny rose that's growing around, and what does that represent? But also, what is that invokes blood, and that can pass on bloodborne diseases and things like that. So right. I don't know the answer to that particular question, but
Vinny wants to know if you have read any of Steph Young's books, and if so, what do you think? She's a writer like you are, in the same genre.
I have not, but I'm always interested in new writers, and I'm happily look her up.
All right, moving on. Prairie Fires, we got 2 minutes left, is asking, what happens if you leave really good pot instead of tobacco for the fairies?
The fairies are really, really happy. Has to be really good, though, No shake. No shake, no seeds.
Way above my pay scale. Stu Gerson wants to know, do you have any news or studies or research on the Loki?
Oh, the Loki. So that's a trickster spirit. And I don't have a ton of research. Actually, only mostly know about Loki because I had a cat when I was a kid that I used to call Loki. And then my mom one day said, "Did you know that Loki is this like trickster spirit?" And I see a lot of parallels with the Pooka and the coyote and some of the other kind of trickster spirits with Loki, that Loki is kind of the god of tricksters and loves a good prank. In fact, a prank that brings you close to death but doesn't kill you is sort of Loki's fave, which is a great name for a cat when you think about it, because, cats are basically constantly thinking about how they can get one over on you.
Okay, I'm still confused what a Loki is.
Loki is the trickster god. So it's basically, that's it. I don't think Lokis are things. It's a specific god. And he is known for being the kind of god of mischief.
So basically you're a descendant because you are mischievous.
I love Loki. I'm good with Loki. Yeah.
Yeah, see? Called that one, people. Called that one right off the bat, right there.
I would venture to guess more than half your listeners are out there our tricksters as well.
Yes, you should.
For the love of Loki,
you should read them in the chat rooms and on Twitter every now and again. You always got to on Twitter. You always got to watch out for Derek and the Snarkettes. That's his new band, Derek and the Snarkettes.
Oh, okay.
So
is Marty? Marty is always the one that amuses me the most on Twitter.
I haven't seen him around lately. Haven't seen him around, but
all right,
we'll find out. Where's Marty?
All right.
We need to know where Marty is.
Miss you.
Spaced Out Radio with Varla Ventura continues right after this. All right, we're clear.
Okay, I'm searching up Marty right now.
Yes. Hey, there's Eric with a K in our Spreaker chat room. We are Eric's 4th favorite show. We're number 4 in Eric's world. Number 4. I love it. Eric's a good dude. Good dude. He actually called me up today. He said, hey, dude, let's chat. So we actually had a good chat. And I apologize, Eric, that I had to cut you off. I had to do a radio interview. That's what I had to do. Radio. See, sometimes I get interviewed too.
Yeah, you do. You're an excellent interviewee.
Oh, I got a good one. I got a good one on Monday. Where is it here? I will be appearing on CKNW 980 AM in Vancouver. Don't know what at 11 a.m. Pacific time, where I'm going to the host Michael Smith is going to host me versus this guy who runs a podcast called Skeptoid. Brian Dunning is his name.
Ooh,
and
fun.
him and I are going to debate the UFO video that was released, because he doesn't believe in anything, and I like woo. I believe in woo.
And you believe in all the things.
Exactly. So we're apparently on Monday at 11 a.m. going to be debating the subject.
That's a pretty fun premise, actually. That's kind of unique.
Yes.
That's quite unique.
It's kind of cool.
So your debate, is it the host that you're debating, or he has another person on?
It's me and the other host.
Okay.
Or me and the other guest will be.
You and the other guest.
I'm going to suplex him. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to suplex him. I'm going to put him in a camel clutch. I'm going to break his back and make him humble, just like the Iron Sheik has trained me to do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. You'll probably be more prepared than he will.
I don't even have to prepare.
You don't have, exactly.
I mean, we're talking about...
You're more prepared.
We're literally talking about the recent UFO videos, okay, that literally have been proven and said they are real by the Pentagon and government officials. What's there to debate? What is there to debate? It's right there.
I'm tweeting Marty right now.
You should.
Aren't you proud of me? Because I'm not great at the tweets. So
I know.
Here I am.
The only time you ever tweet is when you're on this show.
You are 100% right. That is so true. It's the only time it's interesting. People are actually responding, and I feel bad if I just ignore everything. Mm-hmm. There, okay. I just told him we missed him, so we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Susan, you can get it by going, it'll be on the radio, or you could just pull it up online at, I believe it's cknw.com. cknw.com.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna listen.
I'm gonna suplex. I am so gonna drop an elbow
during
on this guy.
During the day too. Have fun.
Yeah. I'm gonna be.
It's a live show. Yes. It's
yeah.
live. You said it's on a video. On a
Mike,
real radio station.
Yeah, like Mike Smith gets about 4 400,000 listeners a show.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's a good PR opportunity for you there, too.
Yeah. So
bring them over to this side. Bring them over to the... Is it the dark side? It is.
No, I'm going to suplex this guy because, it's one thing to be skeptical. It's another thing to be a disbeliever. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to have a talk. I'm going to win. I'm going to tell you that right now.
I think you're going to win.
I'm going to win. I may even rip my shirt off for that one.
Ooh, well, is it going to be on YouTube? It won't matter.
No, it won't be on YouTube.
You can take selfies. No, there will be no evidence of this.
No. Duke says
cool.
flying.
What a great premise.
Flying clothesline.
Really
drop the elbow off the top rope. Waste him. Damn rights, Duke. Damn rights. We got about a minute left here.
Sleeper hold. No one gets out of the sleeper hold.
Oh, no. I'm going more than sleeper hold on this guy. By the way, thank you to Surf Jer, Chad Jacobs, Vinster, Dirty Filth, Rye, and J1 for the awesome super chats tonight. Hi, Cryptic Vin forever. Welcome to the show. Don't forget, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Ring that bell so you know when we are on live. And thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. It all helps. Here we go. More Varla Ventura after this. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. It is such a pleasure to be broadcasting to all of you. I want to say that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio and on Instagram @SpacedOutRadioShow. Varla Ventura is our guest tonight. She is a ray of sunshine in a dark world of cryptids and monsters. VarlaVentura.net. You can find all of her books at any major bookstore, and we bring her right back. Varla, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lovely to be here.
You are welcome. We were talking monsters. I believe we were talking trolls right before the break. And then we got into... what was that evil thing we got into right off the bat here?
Well, someone asked about Loki, the trickster god, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Norse trickster god. To be clear, I think I didn't mention the Norse part. I just said trickster god, like everybody knows. It's Norse.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, in charge of the mischief.
Well,
creating a little mayhem, equivalent to Pan or Puck.
Yes, let's get into Pan and Puck.
Yeah, Pan and Puck. Let's go.
Let's go. What should we know about them? You know, a lot of people who have never heard of Pan. Let's stick with Pan for a second here, because I didn't really hear of Pan until I got into the Hellier series and watched season 2, where they try to literally summon Pan in a cave where it looks like a lot of seances have taken place. Why would someone want to summon Pan? But before that, who is Pan?
Oh, Pan is so delightful. I would totally summon Pan. Pan is the reason we use the word panic. Pan is the sort of a half goat, half human god. Many places have sort of goat-footed god, and so Pan actually has some connections with the devil, or what we might think of as the devil, because frequently the devil is portrayed as being this goat-footed, cloven-hoofed creature that cavorts with witches. Well, witches love Pan. Pan is chaos. Pan brings that. Pan essentially is to, like, Greek mythology what Loki is to Norse mythology. He is the element of surprise. He's that sort of kind of element of chaos, and can create a lot of pandemic. We're really experiencing pan right now, worldwide pandemic. These words are rooted in the origin, they're rooted in the god Pan. And it's a time of complete chaos and unknown, and people completely having to reevaluate everything in their lives. And so, of course, we have that happening, and that's kind of the purpose of these gods in the past and in the present. That's what they serve. Whether it's whether if you're looking at it like, okay, this is a lesson I'm trying to learn, or you're looking at it more like, okay, this is something that I need to tap into and try and appease. So whenever you have the opposite of peace is chaos, right? And the opposite of light is dark. So Pan is the Greek god of essentially chaos and mischief. Loki is the Norse god of chaos and mischief. And when you are in a situation in which, you're dealing with high stakes, Pan can be actually your best friend. So the great thing about Pan, and why I've always loved Pan, is because of that cloven-hoofed association. And you see this, there was actually a great work done many, many years ago all about, it was just called The Goat-Footed God. And then a more modern pagan author named Raven Grimassi took this goat-footed god manuscript from the early 1900s, and he reevaluated it and kind of talked about some of those connections between the devil, Pan. You even see this with Krampus. You see this with other kind of very goaty or horned gods, basically. And it's really a connection to sort of a deep primal thing happening. You would frequently have people donning these skins and horns and creating chaos and ritual. And that's something that, we all know nature brings chaos. Like that's something that happens. So frequently Pan was invoked to try and prevent that, or was blamed for, things like tornadoes and earthquakes and such.
So if he's all there to raise some hell, why is it a good thing
he's basically there to raise hell.
Why the hell should we be trying to summon him from whatever sleep he is in?
Well, because we like to raise hell, Dave. That's why. Because hell is fun, right? Because we need that kind of mischief. We need, if every day you just woke up and everything was like, oh, so nice and peaceful, and the birds were tweeting, and then you just went out and you'd be like, this is so great. This is what I've been wanting. And in a month, you'd be ready to chop someone's hands off. That's just how it goes. So you keep Pan. It's that part of you that you appease that sort of madness a little bit.
Wonderful.
I'm just speaking for myself with the hand chopping thing. That might have been a bit extreme of an example, but you know what I mean. It's like, you think you're going to relax, and it's nice, and it sounds so great. And then however much time passes, maybe for some people it's 6 months or a month or 2 days. But when everything's all, you don't build any character if everything just goes your way, right?
In other words, what Varla is saying is she is in support of the movie proposition of The Purge. That's what you. That's what you stay away.
You're gonna lump me in with the Jehovah's Witnesses or something. Come on now.
If the Purge ever comes to light, Varla will be out there with her mask on, going around with AK-47s and machetes and taking everybody out. Stay away from Varla when that happens. Just saying.
Or stay behind me. That would be my recommendation.
No, because if you don't have a good kill line going on in The Purge, you're definitely going to turn on someone. I know you, just because you're going to do that pan thing and, get all crazy and excited.
But seriously, though, if everything went your way all the time, you would not be able to gain strength of character. And the ancient Greeks knew this. The the Norse knew this, the Celts knew this. This is a way of connecting humans with the madness of nature and the way to overcome things that are completely chaotic and beyond our control, like a pandemic.
Okay. What about puck? The only puck I know is a hockey puck, which 10 people will drop the gloves in order to win that little battle for that 3.5-inch disc.
I know, right? It's funny to me. I've actually tried. I'm still working on the connection between Puck, the sort of magical pan-like spirit, and the hockey puck. And I know that there's an element of chaos involved in hockey, right? There's a scramble. But puck is essentially sort of more like the Roman or more Anglified variation of pan. Again, a mischievous sort of centaur-like spirit, right? Like half human, half animal, usually something like a horse or a goat. And we know Puck most well from Midsummer Night's Dream, in which he basically creates a little bit of chaos. He creates this sort of scenario in which, they all kind of, there's a wedding and it's just kind of madness, right? And it's all these things that happen in this one given night while someone's sleeping on the fairy mound. And Puck is the one that's really, he's having fun. He's skipping about. There's also a childlike element to Puck, which is very much like Pan. I mean, Pan is like the toddler of the pantheon, basically, right? Because we all, if you're a parent or you've been around a toddler, you know what kind of havoc they can wreak, and next to no time, they can completely upend your life or your living room or whatever it is. And so that's kind of the equivalent. And Puck is very much a variation of that, kind of a more, slightly more gentle and fun-loving versus causing complete chaos to reign, but nonetheless a mischief maker. And so Pooka and Puck are actually very similar words, and they have a lot in common in terms of both what they are and where the words come from. So the idea of a puka, which is sometimes spelled Puka, which is basically like a pucka, right? Is this trickster fairy, this shapeshifter, this thing that appears as one thing and kind of completely causes chaos. And again, this chaos, I mean, obviously, like there's usually some kind of harm or death with like extreme chaos, but by and large, it's usually just a rude awakening kind of chaos. And that's very much the role that the Puka plays in the fairy kingdom, and as does Puck, as does Pan and Loki. They all kind of, I mean, these are all kind of variations on the exact same thing, just to cause a little mayhem. What's a little mayhem among friends?
Also a good song by Hailstorm. So, you know.
There you go.
Have you heard that song, Mayhem by Hailstorm?
Mm-mm,
oh, it's a good one. It's a good one. You're going to want to check it out after the show. Go to YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, Lizzie Hale totally rocks. Totally rocks. Anyways, moving on as we continue on here on Spaced Out Radio. We got a question from Jeff in our Spreaker chat room. Have you ever studied or researched the elementals, earth, wind, fire, and water, appearing and speaking to people?
So my experience with the elementals is mostly in very like ethereal kind of, general magical earth, air, fire, water, all the principles, and sort of matching all of those to create some kind of spell work or whatever. But in the fairy kingdom, and in particular in Irish mythology, the elementals are the origins of the fairies, that the elemental spirits are where the fairies actually come from. And so you have those elements and you have fairies that fall in that classification. For example, you have the water fairies and the water spirits. You have the woodland or the earth-dwelling spirits. So the elementals are almost like the beginning of all of fairy kingdom. Now, for me, that's something that I learned at a very young age, reading some literature about fairies and the beginnings of fairies. So not just fairy tales, but actually reading about fairy origins and some of the original Celtic myths. And that's where elementals kind of fit in. But I think that a lot of people in modern times use the elementals for magic and for an understanding of where, where these kind of magical creatures can fit in.
Do you believe that they are everywhere? I know.
Fairies?
No, the elementals. They could just show up?
So I actually don't think the elementals are different than fairies. I think fairies came from, I think it's actually the same thing. That's where I think my view differs from a lot of people. They view elementals as something separate. I view elementals as classifications for these types of fairies that came from an original elemental story, just like the Banshee originally came from the fairy mound. So in that regard, yes, I do believe that these fairy spirits are everywhere and you can tap into them or you can totally ignore them. Honestly, I ignore them a lot, probably more than I should.
Why? That's right up your alley.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think we all ignore them. I think, I drive my son to school and I'm probably ignoring like 25 elementals along the way,
They're like hitchhikers to you.
Yeah.
Just pull over and pick them up.
Yeah, just hang out, guys. I'm going to just light a candle at midnight.
Do you ever worry, because of the realm you're in, and I go through this as well, Varla Ventura. Do you ever worry that you're bringing the energy of all of these home to you?
No.
Why?
Because I'm not worried about it, because I like them. So I don't worry about them. I'm not, you think I'm going to or you think like something negative?
Yes.
I got my ways. I've got my protective ways. I'm really not worried. These things don't scare me, Dave. They really don't. And I don't feel that there's a sort of evil presence that I need to be worried about. And I'm way more concerned with creepers like real life humans that might show up outside my doorstep than I am any kind of entity out there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've faced more than one entity in my life and been just come out fine, but humans can do some damage. So
I will make sure that two of my listeners, Fapster and Vinster, do not know that you're single.
Okay. I don't want clowns showing up outside. I don't want someone dressed like a clown.
I hate clowns.
Smile.
Everybody
hates clowns. There's nothing good about clowns.
No. I think, remember that whole clown phase a few years ago when it was coming out and everybody was, you saw it across North America and the world where people were like dressing up as clowns and, creeping people out. I think one of the best videos I ever saw on YouTube was this clown was dragging like a sledgehammer down a highway bridge or something. And this guy stopped and the clown started approaching and this guy literally pulls a gun on the clown, like right there on video. I mean, it's amazing more of those clowns were not killed.
I know. It feels like very dangerous behavior to be so many people have a fear and dislike of clowns. It's like you're just inviting trouble.
Yes. Fap wants to know in the chat room if you like men with big heads. Like, I got a size 8. His is like a size 14. Okay? Size 14 head. Big melon.
I mean,
big melon.
I don't know how to answer that. It's
creepy.
I really don't know how to answer
creepy.
that. Yeah.
Giant melon on Fap in our chat room. Just saying. You know, but speaking of the clown thing, but in a Sasquatch term, did you ever know that when they were filming Star Wars back in the 70s and early 80s, for the first original 3, when they did the scenes in the forest, I think it was for Return of the Jedi, that it was filmed.
Ewok Forest?
Yeah, that was filmed in Washington State. And literally, the gentleman who was playing Chewbacca was told not to leave the crew while out in the forest because they were afraid that there might be hunters nearby and take a shot at a Sasquatch.
Yeah, because the PNW, like Pacific Northwest, is Sasquatch territory. There's more that in the other part of the U.S. anyway, where there's tons and tons of Bigfoot sightings and just a lot of cultural lore is Maine, the northern part of Maine.
It's just weird, man.
Yeah, just don't go out in a bear costume. I mean, just put that on your list of things not to do, right? Like, don't go out in your Chewbacca costume in the woods. Don't dress like a bear and lumber behind someone on the highway. Try to avoid clown behavior at all times. These are rules for survival.
And stay away from Fap's giant head. That's all we'll say. Giant head. I don't know where that's going, but it's just it's funny to me. It's
not go anywhere with
internal
it right now,
joke. So I have a creepy story to share with you.
Oh, good.
I started thinking about it because over the last couple of months, I've really got into these creepy pasta stories that are on YouTube. Have you ever heard those?
Pasta?
That's what they're called, creepy pasta, where people put allegedly true tales and they record the voices, these stories. We've actually started it on our own YouTube channel. We've got 4 of them now on there at youtube.com/spaced out radio. And we call them SOR's True Tales, except what I'm doing different is I'm actually getting real people to tell me their stories. So it's kind of cool. But anyways, I started watching this, and one of the episodes that I heard was about Windigos and Skinwalkers. How when you're in a forest, if you're all alone, you may get called into the forest.
Oh.
And this brought up a story that happened a couple of years ago with my friend Mike, where Mike was hunting for grouse in this gravel pit, probably 15 miles from where we are right now. And he starts hearing my name. Mike, he starts hearing my voice, pardon me. Mike, help me. Come on in here, help me. And yet the voice was all around him. It wasn't in one direction of the forest. He said it felt like it was all around him. And that there was no particular direction, like no matter where he looked, the sound was there of my voice. Now, I'm back in town. I'm at work during the day. I wasn't out in the forest. And in this area, that time of year, there isn't a lot of people in the forest. So it was creepy. And I talked to one of the First Nations elders around here about this about a week ago. And I asked him if we had any Windigos or Skinwalkers around, and he hadn't heard any of that, but he did say that the forest people, not Sasquatch, but the little people, or the fairies or the gnomes might do that as well, as they are known as tricksters.
Ooh.
All I said
they
to
were
my buddy,
trying to lure him.
Yes, but I said to my buddy, I said, I said, I honestly believe that if you would have walked in there, you'd have never come back.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
Because there's another First Nations area on that road, on that way. And I don't know what they believe. I got to talk to somebody that I know there. But I don't know if there's skinwalkers there. I don't know if there's Windigo in our area. I know there has been Windigo sightings in British Columbia up north, but not in my area. But I'm going to let you think about that. We're going to leave that we'll leave that on a cliffhanger because we do have to go to break here at the top of the hour. We have the lovely and talented Varla Ventura, varlaventura.net. Our Cryptid World is what we call her special. Every couple of months we do this with her. I think we got to go once a month with Varla. That's just me. I'll have to convince her of that. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. All right, we're clear. Hi, Katie. Hi, Judy Macapuro. Welcome to our chat room for the first time. And Tristan Stevens, thank you for joining us as well. We're just going to go on break here, and there will be some silence here. Varla will be hanging on out. I'll be right back. All right, I am
Trooping
back.
all together.
What's
Green
that?
jacket, red cap, and white owl's feather. Oh, I was reading a poem.
Oh, very nice.
Just reading a little fairy poem for anyone who was listening.
I had your microphone down.
Oh, well, I was reading it to myself then.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. All right. All right. We've got about 2 minutes, hon.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know. Now the audience is mad at me that I had your microphone down. Terrible times, how are you? Welcome to the show. Let's go here. We need to update your bio.
I probably need to update my bio.
Definitely need to update your bio.
So much bio updating needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. Varla Ventura needs to update her bio. Breaking news here on Spaced Out Radio.
Yeah.
Jeff says, just for that, it's going to snow again for 3 weeks. No, it's not. No, it's not. We're in a heat wave right now. Heat wave. All right, we got 30 seconds. I want to say a big thank you to J1, Rye, Dirty Filth, Vinster, Chad, and Surf Jer for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do. Another great way to support what we do, guys, is give us a thumbs up or thumbs down and hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you know when we are going to be live on the air here on Spaced Out Radio. And do us a favor, check out our SOR True Tales. It's a new feature we have on the channel. I'm sure you're going to really like that. Here we go with hour 3.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate earning your listening ears in the darkness of night. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. All you got to do is go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Twyforked. Twyforked is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce Varla Ventura. She is from varlaventura.net. You can find all of her books at any major bookstore around North America and around the world. She is one of the most talented writers when it comes to all things weird, strange, and cryptid. Welcome back, Varla.
Thank you.
Got a question right off the bat here from Cloudy with a Chance of UFOs. What is
love that name?
Yeah, I love it too. What is Varla's most positive experience dealing with this subject?
Positive? I mean, I would say by and large, the entire thing has been positive. My most positive experience has been traveling in Ireland and meeting people who I recently was listening to a show and there was an Irish tour guide, and he said, you ask 100 Irish people if they believe in fairies and they'll say no, but leave them in a fairy fort or by a fairy tree at midnight and, you'll hear a completely different story. And so that is definitely the most positive for me, is just that, that kind of element of being able to be in an environment that I've read about for years and ask people for their stories and, just kind of hear other people's experiences as it relates to the fairy kingdom specifically.
Really?
That's just great. It's just great when, just when I feel like, oh, maybe I'm on the wrong trail here, maybe this just can't be, and I'll just get, a complete believer who will remind me that I'm on the right path. So
that's actually kind of cool. Do you get visited by spirits a lot?
Yes, but not necessarily fairies but like ghost spirits. Yeah, fair amount. I have regular conversations with my grandparents in particular, and that's usually when I'm dreaming or kind of like, astral traveling, something like that. I'm sort of a casual astral traveler. Don't really intend to, but the next thing I know, I'm out of body. But yeah, I do. I try and listen. I once had, I'm more of I don't even know what, I call myself a supernaturalist, but I have a friend, he's Scottish. I haven't actually talked to him in many years, but I met him in San Francisco, and he was one of the first people that I met that really, he had grown up in a very strict religious environment in which the communing with anything that wasn't, the Holy Spirit was considered wrong. And he was incredibly empathic and psychic. In fact, this guy couldn't walk by a cemetery because he would hear so many voices walking by a cemetery that he would feel kind of crazy. And he once said to me, they just cruise through here. They sit on your little altar, they check out your beautiful flowers and things like that and your candles. And it's like a resting place. They don't necessarily linger. And I think that's probably still true to this day. I like to create an environment in which spirits and spooky things are welcome, but they usually don't linger because, they just, have a little glass of wine and then move on to terrorize someone. Kidding. Move on to, flit about in the forest and magically appear. Okay. To terrorize someone.
Yes, like Dave. Like Nikki wants to know, when you are astral traveling, do you bilocate?
So for me, basically what happens is I just have out of body, and then I realize that, I don't know if it's really bilocating. I know that I'm not in my body, and I have usually a 30-second panic-like moment of not being able to get back in my body or wake up. But I usually know where I am at all times, other than, like I'm painfully aware of where I am. So I don't know. I'm so lazy about it. It's just terrible. I'm terribly lazy, casual traveler on the astral plane. I really should be not so blasé, but I'm so lazy about it.
I haven't astral traveled in a while. I really haven't. Probably should. Probably should,
yeah.
But...
Yeah, I could hone my skills, and just, like I said, I'm kind of lazy about it. And I admit it.
Well, all right, Rye is asking, Varla, what do you know about Saturn worship? Why is it such a big thing with the elites?
Well, what I know about Saturn worship is just sort of the whole idea of worshiping. So Saturn, like if you're talking about the god, like the Roman god Saturn, we're talking essentially about Father Time, and also sometimes equated with Cronus. So there's a sort of a little bit of a facing your own mortality element of worshiping Saturn. And of course, people who are familiar with astrology will know about a Saturn return, which is a time that usually takes place in your late 20s. And I think it happens like every 26 or 28 years. Again, I'm a lazy astrologist as well. Everything I learned before the age of 12. But you have your Saturn return, and that is a time when you basically go through major, what some people might consider like a life crisis or whatever, but it's a time when you go through a major transformation, death, mortality. These are the things that we associate with Saturn. So that's about the extent of my knowledge.
All right. Tristan would like to know, how do I attract garden fairies into the garden for help?
Great question. You can create a really beneficial environment for both fairies and any kind of pollinator at the same time. So I can tell you what I do, and I know what some other people do. I know what my mom actually has a fairy well in the middle of her garden. So it's a small area that she's built up with rocks, and she's sort of created a little place where the water can be, and she's got clover planted around it. She's really into fairy magic, like heavy into fairy magic, like transforming her life by going through the fairy well. I'm more, again, a little bit casual about it, but I always have just a couple of things that you need. A little designated spot, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be kind of a small area. You want some kind of little structure, so it can be rocks, it can be like something where you put a little door in, or just sort of a little kind of nook. And then beautiful plants, especially flowering plants, and anything that just kind of grows very abundantly and green, and then also some kind of water element. So if it's not a fountain, it can be a dish of water. And then in my household, we leave shiny things for the fairies. We leave little marbles, or occasionally nice little clay sculptures that we've made, or other little gifts. And all of those things, you can do that in a tiny little pot. You can do it in a big section of your garden if you want. But essentially, you're just creating a little designated, like, natural altar that you can, just dedicate to the fairies. Leave them gifts, and they will return the favor.
Romantic. Very
Isn't
romantic.
it? Yeah, it's sweet.
And it's easy to do, and no offense, it looks good.
Yeah, it's easy to do. And you have, if people haven't heard of the Findhorn community, but that's a community in Scotland that worked with the elementals and the fairies, and basically were able to turn otherwise completely craggy, stone-filled limestone land into this abundant garden that grew giant cabbages and incredible plants. And this is a phenomenon. This was in the 70s that this took place. And so it was modern times for connecting with fairy and the fairy folk, and creating this environment that was in harmony with the environment, but also with these natural elementals.
All right, let's get to a question from Miller, who is asking, how do I treat a vampire bite?
Carefully. I mean, really, a vampire bite, if you've actually been bitten by a vampire, there's not a lot you can do, right? If it's gotten to the point where a vampire's gotten that close to you, you're probably going to be infected. That's inevitable. It's not like you can just rub garlic on it and get rid of it. I know a few people who have been bit in the face by bats. So if you actually do think a bat may have bitten you, you probably need to go get like the rabies shots just to be on the safe side. But yeah, man, I don't know.
You believe, though, that there are actual vampires walking on Earth?
Yeah, I do. I think that they fall more in the realm of the psychic vampire, the sort of energy vampire. I think there's a lot of those, and I think there's a lot of really irresponsible and unawakened vampires. So if you have a person who has like extreme psychic abilities, and then they never really tap into them, then they just kind of occasionally have these experiences. And in the same way that vampirism can be very similar to that. You can have a unawakened vampire who doesn't realize that that they're kind of an energy vampire, and that they're relying on and basically sucking on and preying on other people's like energy and life force, and they're sort of irresponsibly just walking around being a user. If they're awakened, they will transform and use that responsibly. But I would say that the number of people who use that responsibly is less than the number of people, and I'm not disparaging vampires. Awakened vampires, as you well know, are some of my closest friends. But the unawakened vampire roams out there, and that's the real danger. That's the one that, drains you of your energy, gets you to do things you don't really want to do. Gets you in compromising situations, can get you into abusive situations. Those are the real vampires out there.
All right, let's get to a question from Bombshell Bomber, somewhere in Canada. She's on the East Coast. She's up late.
Also a rad name.
Yes. She is asking, Varla, have you ever heard of water babies? What are they? Because when I was really little, allegedly I said, I knew real-life water babies, so I'm told.
Oh, I have heard of water babies, and they're basically little water nymphs that are in the form of children. They appear in a few different stories that I've read, usually in kind of the from the British Isles, in ponds. You see them a lot in ponds, not necessarily like something that you'd see in the ocean. So not specifically related to mermaids, but maybe more related to like water nymphs. And they're sort of childlike spirit guardians of the water. So that's very cool.
Were they scary?
No, not at all. Actually, there's no. I've never read a scary water baby story. Did they scare your listener? Because everything I've read about them is that they're just, sort of these magical, sweet things that appear and, remind you that the water is enchanted. There's scary water spirits, but the water babies, not so much.
What's a scary water spirit?
Well, I mean, anything that might drown you.
Mermaids?
So, mermaids are super scary. Come here, can't you just help me out of this tide pool, please? I just wait. Can you just put me a little further into the water? Just a couple more feet. Just go out, and then the tide just grabs you, and it's all over. And then you're just being pulled down, and you're drowned, and your soul is forever trapped beneath the sea.
Terrible. Terrible. That just freaks me out.
It's scary, but it's scary for a good reason. I mean, if you've ever spent, I know you have, we've discussed this in the past. I know you personally have not spent time in the ocean. You don't like the ocean for swimming or anything like that. I certainly have spent time, and I have spent a lot of time on the Pacific coast, the Northern California Pacific coast, which is quite treacherous, and there are a lot of long-fingered tides that can pull you in all directions, and it's very easy to get disoriented, and it's very easy to kind of answer that mermaid call in those situations. So it is scary. I mean, mermaids in particular are scary because, like, in a lot of these scenarios, we're talking about you just being in, like, a natural environment. Maybe you're in the woods or you're alongside a road. But with mermaids, we're talking about like drowning. We're talking about an environment that you will not be able to breathe. And no matter how much the more you fight, the harder you fall, So they're particularly terrifying in that way.
What other sea creatures or elementals are out there to get us? Because I'm just thinking this is more reason not to go into the ocean.
Well, not necessarily out there to get us, but you do have the water horses. You have the kelpies, which are basically like sea horses. They're very popular and known in Scotland. They are not necessarily evil in any way. They're more kind of like magical guardian spirits. You have your typical kind of like inland water nymph, also very mischievous and can kind of tease you, but doesn't, most people don't necessarily drown in the pond in the park nearby them. But there's instances like that. You have selkies, which are super cool. I don't really consider them out there to get you, but selkies are seals who can take off their coats and become beautiful women on land, and they can marry. I've never heard of a male selkie. I'm sure they exist, but it's usually women, and they can marry mortal men. But what you have to do if you want to marry a selkie is you have to take her coat and her seal coat, and you have to hide it and basically bury it or put it away in a box somewhere. And if the selkie ever finds it, she's forced to return to the sea. And there are a ton of stories, especially in the British Isles, about selkies, but you see them in other parts of the world as well. And there's also some, very mournful, beautiful songs about selkies who have to leave their children behind because they've found their coat, and they'll continually look back longingly from the rocks at the family that they left behind. Kind of tragic.
Have you ever heard of the Headless Valley in the Nahanni Valley in the Northwest Territories of Canada?
No.
This is something that I am just absolutely enthralled about learning about. And one of these days, I am going to try and find someone. Very few people actually report on it. But allegedly, going back a number of years, they're not sure what it was causing it, but all of these explorers went missing, and when they found them, all their heads had been ripped off. Not cut off, ripped off. And they believe that it might be some sort of creature that was doing it, or just some crazed human being. But yeah.
Either way, it's an intriguing story.
Yes.
Wow, creepy.
And the legend still goes on. Still goes on.
Oh.
But, I mean, you don't hear about the people getting their heads ripped off anymore. But the legend of the story is still there. And it's much intrigue to a lot of people in the Sasquatch community because, if it's a rogue Sasquatch or a rogue Sasquatch clan that is very violent protecting their area, makes sense.
Well, you know more about Sasquatch than I do. Is that that seems like atypical to me, but I don't, that's not my area of expertise. But it seems to me like most Bigfoot are elusive and not necessarily aggressive.
In certain areas. Like the one, but I mean, like everything though has its own little rogue
limits.
Packs. I mean, you look at killer whales. Those that get kicked out of pods and start their own rogue pod, they're more vicious animals, or dolphins, I guess, because that's what a killer whale is, a dolphin. They're more vicious and prone to attack anything, including people, rather than the main pods, which really don't have any desire to hurt people. So,
unless you trap them in like Marine World or whatever.
Yeah. Don't like that. I don't like that. My friend, we got 90 seconds left with you tonight. Another show that has flown on by with the great Varla Ventura. Tell everybody where they can find your books and more information. What do you got coming up for us?
Oh, yeah. Okay. varlaventura.net. And actually, I just recently started a kind of a fun little project, and I posted a link on Facebook, and I'll put it up on my website one of these days too. But it's this site called bookshop.org, and they support local bookstores and independent authors. And I basically started curating some of my favorite books. So obviously I put my own books on there, but also books that I draw upon and books that I've loved and books that I've read recently. And it's kind of an alternative to Amazon. You can go on there, you can check out, you can buy the books. Percentages go to authors as well as to local bookstores that supply the bookshop. And so I just kind of started that the other day. I thought it would be fun because I read a lot. Right? Not just weird fairy and folklore. I read a lot of contemporary thriller fiction and horror and such. So I've curated that, but you can find out about it on varlaventura.net or visit me on Facebook or Twitter when I'm on Dave Scott's show, when I'm on Spaced Out Radio. And you know what? I have an Instagram now. So
yes. You have an Instagram.
I think you and Joe Diamond are my friends on there. So,
perfect.
I got that Instagram. Thank you.
Varla, we love you. Thank you for coming on with Our Cryptid World. We'll talk to you again very soon. Varla Ventura, everybody. Coming up next, we have the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. High quality show there, Varla Ventura.
That was great. Thank you. Always doing lots of questions.
I know.
I always love that.
I know.
Makes it easy, right?
Do you want to come on once a month? Do you want to think about that?
Sure. Yeah. I'll come on once a month.
I think it's fun.
Yeah. I have to ask you a question, though. Is that a deflated watermelon on your wall?
That's a hat.
Is it? Okay. It looks like a deflated watermelon.
No, it's a hat.
So.
See, in the Canadian Football League, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, they're weird people. Their fans are weird people. So they'll be sitting in like minus 30, minus 40 degrees Celsius with no shirt on, and they wear watermelons on top of their head because the team colors are green and white. So,
okay, that's like the equivalent of Wisconsin here, basically.
Yeah, it'd be like it's the same thing as the cheeseheads, right?
Yeah, okay.
Same thing.
Shirtless cheeseheads.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
I don't get it. So one of our Saskatchewan listeners, the Ukrainian watermelon, little Ronnie Moniak, sent me that hat.
Awesome. Okay, but it is a watermelon. So
it is a watermelon. Yes.
Awesome. Good to know.
What else can you see back there? Right above me, you can see my blue orb beside my Sasquatch search kit.
The blue orb.
That'd be right about here. No, hold on. You're looking the other side. I'm looking on YouTube.
There's the blue orb. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, some guitars.
Yeah, I've got the guitars. What else we got here?
Yeah, your search kit. I like your alien candles. I have a gnome candle that I won't burn. I just can't bring myself to burn it. It's so cute. You'd probably like to burn it.
I would totally not burn it. I got Carl candles.
Those are cool.
Yeah. One of these days I'm going to figure out how I can sell these. Not these ones.
But just in general.
Yeah. One of these days. Figure it on out. Figure it on out. But that's okay. That's okay. Well, great show.
Thanks.
Great show. Well,
great show on you. Thanks for having me again.
That's what I do.
You always make me look good. I appreciate it.
No, you do that yourself. I just show up and play the moron on this side of the microphone.
Hardly.
Hardly. All right, my friend. You take care. We'll talk soon. Hey, read that thing. I'm calling you in a few days.
Yep.
Read that thing.
I have it pulled up already.
Good.
Yep.
Talk to you soon.
Yep. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Varla Ventura, everybody. She's so much fun. I really do think that we need to bring her on here once a month, because she is just way too much fun. Way too much fun. That's my opinion. What do you guys think? Grandmaster, what's going on, man? Thought you guys would think that. Cool. All right, we got about 20 seconds. Hold on, guys. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us in. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, let's do this thing, shall we? The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the magnificent. Why? Why not? Because we got some really, really cool stories here for you tonight. Let's just get right to them, shall we? The United States military wants to fly nuclear-powered spacecraft by 2025. Why would they even want to do this? Let's just be honest. Why would they want to do this? I don't know. Own space? Space isn't supposed to even be owned. But yet, here we are. Here we are. Well, let's continue on and find out why, shall we? The U.S. Department of Defense wants to get a nuclear-powered spacecraft up in space by 2025. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, otherwise known as DARPA, awarded contracts to 3 companies: General Atomics, Lockheed Martin, and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, to develop the nuclear thermal propulsion technology necessary to boost a rocket out of low Earth orbit. The awards are part of the agency's demonstration rocket for agile cislunar Operations Program, otherwise known as DRACO. The NTP technology we seek to develop and to demonstrate under the DRACO program aims to be the foundational to the future operations in space, said Major Nathan Grenier, Program Director for DRACO. Currently, spacecrafts are either powered by electric or chemical propulsion systems, and the DRACO team sees drawbacks to both of these methods. Electric systems have lower thrust-to-weight ratios, while chemical systems struggle with propellant efficiency. Current on-orbit propulsion systems are limited in how quickly they are able to cross large distances, Grenier stated in an email. This prohibits the current on-orbit propulsion systems from being able to conduct timely maneuvers in the vast distances between geo and cislunar regime. Now, the DRACO program hopes that the nuclear-powered system could match the best of both technologies, the high-to-thrust weight ratio of chemical propulsion and the high propellant efficiency of electronic systems to move much faster over longer distances. Making a faster, more efficient spacecraft serves the Department of Defense goal of rapid maneuver in cislunar space. Phase 1 of the DRACO program will last 18 months and consist of 2 tracks. Track A, it's like an 8-track tape here. Track A involves the design of the nuclear reactor itself and will be General Atomics' responsibility. And Track B, oh, by the way, that's worth $22.2 million. Track B focuses on developing spacecraft designs. Blue Origin and Lockheed Martin will take on this challenge with contracts worth $2.5 million and $2.9 million, respectively. Let's see if that goes anywhere. All right, more on the triangle video of Jeremy Corbell, with the Pentagon confirming the authenticity of the newly leaked video and images showing multiple UFO sightings by U.S. Navy personnel as the government prepares to release a highly anticipated first-of-its-kind report on UFOs this summer. An 18-second video shows what is described as 3 pyramid-shaped UFOs hovering over the warships USS Russell at night in July of 2019, off the San Diego coast. At one point, the pyramid-shaped craft reportedly hovered 700 feet over the tail of the Russell. This is the first video the public has seen from the July 2019 incident in which mysterious UFOs, described as unmanned aerial vehicles, reportedly harassed at least 3 U.S. warships during military training exercises over multiple days, at one point matching the speed and bearing of one destroyer for 90 minutes while performing brazen maneuvers. Now, months earlier, an FA-18 Hornet pilot reportedly used his cell phone to snap photos of 3 different unidentified aircrafts off the coast of Oceania in March, including 2 UFOs dubbed the Metallic Blimp and the Sphere. All right, it's kind of interesting when that happens, but nonetheless, they did it. I can confirm that the reference photos and the videos were taken by Navy personnel. Department of Defense spokesperson Susan Goff says the UAPTF has included that these incidents in their ongoing examinations will be discovered and noted further. The video and images were leaked to filmmaker Jeremy Corbell, who has a great beard, who made the documentary Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, along with great intrepid investigative journalist George Knapp of KLAS-TV in Las Vegas. Corbell and Knapp independently confirmed the leaked documents are unclassified images that were part of a series of classified briefings intended to educate members of the U.S. intelligence community about UFOs traveling in restricted airspace. This is explosive information, Corbell says. This is probably the best UFO military film footage, certainly that he's ever seen, but he also thinks that the world has ever seen as well. In a separate event, 3 photos leaked to Corbell, purportedly from the USS Omaha, show a spherical UFO descending into the ocean, seamlessly disappearing without destruction. According to Corbell, a submarine unsuccessfully attempted to find the unidentified aerial vehicle. This is an extraordinary piece of technology, Corbell stated. Whoever is operating these technologies are far more advanced than anything we in the U.S. arsenal have, and this should be a warning sign. We need to find out the intent of the operators of these vehicles. The Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force is now investigating what these unidentified crafts are. The UAPTF was formed in the summer of 2020 in an effort to improve the Department of Defense's understanding of and gain sight into the nature and origins of UAP, particularly those incursions by unauthorized aircraft into our training ranges and designated airspace. Oh, this is getting fun. Real fun. Well, here's a weird one. Cults are a staple of horror movies, and it's not too rare to see some horrendously twisted cult make headlines in reality either. But not every cult is a brainwashing, abusive secret society. Some of them are just plain bizarre in their beliefs. Yeah, let's take a look at some of them. We actually cover these cults in a recent story. The cargo cults are found around the world but are particularly common on some South Pacific islands. The local tribes follow these faiths, warships, Western military technology, and soldiers as either deities or their emissaries. Some have constructed life-size replicas of military cargo planes, while some stage imitations of flag-raising ceremonies and military parades. The cults got their beginning during World War II when Allied and Japanese forces used the natives' islands as naval bases. The foreign troop brought with them technology and foods the natives could have ever imagined. After they left, they started imitating the soldiers' routines in hopes that the cargo planes and ships would return. Oh. Gage Theology. What is this? It sounds like Scientology, but this cult is, believe it or not, even more bizarre. Originating in Russia, the members of this cult venerate a peculiar deity, the female cartoon mouse Gadget Hackwrench from the Chippendale Rescue Rangers. It is a bit unclear why Gagetology is a parody of established religion or an actual cult, but it's weird nonetheless. The adherents have constructed altars and written sacred texts and religious hymns with a single goal, bringing their cartoon god to life through sheer force of faith. Realism, well, we've heard this one before. These aliens, known as Elohim, supposedly revealed themselves to French motorsports journalist Claude Vorilon in 1973. He assumed the name Real and has grown the movement over years to some 100,000 adherents. As far as cults go, Realism is pretty harmless, mostly just weird. They believe strongly in sexual meditation, although they do emphasize consent and excommunicate anyone found guilty of abusive sexual practices. Oh, and they've claimed to have successfully cloned a human being in 2002. When journalists asked if they could see the clone, the cult responded with a firm no. Chen Tao. Chen preached to his followers that our solar system was 4.5 trillion years old, and about 300 times older than the entire universe, according to current theories. It is also created as a result of an alien nuclear war. Each of us have 3 separate souls, claimed Chen. He also stated that God has saved humanity on 5 separate occasions when he descended to Earth on a flying saucer. The Brethren is a movement known as the Garbage Eaters. Yeah, the cult is a brainchild of one Jim Roberts, who founded it as an offshoot to the Jesus hippie scene in the 70s. This could have gone down a dark path. The Manson family was born around the same time. Luckily, Roberts wasn't out for blood. All he asked from his followers was to give up everything. Houses, cars, personal possessions, even clothes had to go. Roberts insisted his followers lead homeless lives, discourage bathing, and encourage them to eat trash and discarded food. How is that? Sounds yummy, doesn't it? Everybody needs a hobby, no matter how inconsequential it is, and any hobby becomes infinitely more enjoyable when you can share it with like-minded people. But in this case, sharing your hobby turned out to be the worst possible decision. An Italian mafia boss's love for his native country's cooking led to his arrest a couple of weeks ago. 53-year-old Mark Ferrin Claude Biart is suspected of being a big player in the Calabrian crime syndicate. Italian authorities ordered his arrest in 2014 for alleged cocaine trafficking in the Netherlands. However, Briart was never arrested. He seemed to simply vanish, leaving police no clue as to where he might be. We all know that Briart actually moved around town from Boca Chica in the Dominican Republic. He kept a low profile, led a quiet life, known to locals only by his first name. Had he kept that up, he probably would have got away with it. till those pesky YouTubers came along. As it turns out, Briart is an enthusiastic amateur cook, loves Italian cooking, wanted to share his cuisine from his home country with the rest of the world, so he decided to do what everyone does, start a YouTube channel. Yeah, on the channel, Briart would share his recipes and cooking techniques. At the same time, he'd extol the virtues of authentic Italian cuisine. Didn't seem to be the smartest thing for a fugitive to do, though, as all the internet could see, but Briart wasn't dumb, and he took precautions. He meticulously hid his face on every single video. Might have also counted on the cops not suspecting that a mafia boss would be posting hobby videos on YouTube. Well, he bet wrong. Yes, Briart's arrest is part of a large-scale international effort against the organization. Launched last year, the program aims to disrupt the crime syndicate on every continent, and for good reason, too. The crime family is one of the most notorious and violent of Italian mafia organizations. It dabbles in an impressive portfolio of criminal activities, including kidnappings, drug trafficking, murders, bribing, and more. The police effort is bearing fruit. In addition to Briart, another boss was also arrested in Portugal at the end of March. Francesco Pelle had been on the run 14 years. He stands accused of organizing an assassination attempt on a rival mafia boss, which failed to kill its target but resulted in the death of his wife. Pelle is also thought to be a key figure in another feud in Germany, which led to 6 murders in 2007. Well, the crime life doesn't pay. Here's a weird one out of Australia. A video of dancers twerking in hot pants. Well, at an Australian military event, seeing the country go into a spin. The scene was incongruous, bizarre, and funny, so of course it went viral when it emerged this past Wednesday. But the music video-style choreography, featuring thumps, thrusts, and butt shakes, all came under attack. Conservative lawmakers let the chorus of those calling it inappropriate. Tabloids splashed headlines slamming military standards, but others found offense elsewhere, projecting shame onto the dancers and labeling their routine as too sexualized. That in turn sparked backlash over the policing of women's bodies and women's dancing. The dance troupe in the footage, 101 Doll Squadron, complained about the media coverage. Also, it emerged the clip had been wrongly edited by the ABC, the national broadcaster. Those voices got louder. So how exactly was the Navy twerking saga unfolding? Well, let's see where it goes. The 101 Doll Squadron were hired by the Royal Australian Navy to perform a commissioning ceremony on Saturday for a new ship, the HMAS Supply. However, the event only gained wider attention after an ABC reporter shared a separate video on Twitter which spliced shots of the women's energetic gyrations with stone-faced reactions of attending military leaders. His tweet, later deleted, quoted a government MP bemoaning a fall in Defense Force standards. This framing set off a viral firestorm. Yes, it would. Don't twerk if you're in the Navy. Now, when animal welfare officers received a report of an unusual animal lurking in a tree in the Polish city of Krakow, they weren't expecting to find this. People aren't opening their windows because they're afraid it will go into the house, a woman said, but a visit to the area showed the creature in question was not a bird, not a reptile, not a monster, but a croissant. Yes, you heard me right, a croissant. But the Krakow Animal Welfare Society said the incident was genuine. Writing on their Facebook page, the organization said its officers had asked the desperate caller whether the unidentified animal, which had been in the tree for 2 days, could be a bird of prey. The woman responded, it looked more like a lagoon, Polish for lagoon, before remembering the correct word, leguan or iguana. Well, although the inspectors knew that it was unlikely that a reptile would survive the cool spring temperatures in the southern Polish city, they wondered if the animal could have been unwanted pets abandoned by its owners. But arriving on the scene, they find out it was pastry all along. Never mess with a wild croissant. Oh, if you want to get into the black market, this may be the one for you. Just saying. Apparently, you know how we all have that drawer filled with ketchup packages that we get from fast food places? Well, apparently there's a shortage of ketchup People are now putting their unopened packets up for sale on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and elsewhere for prices ranging from $1 per pack to over $1,000 for just a few. The trend was first noticed by the Wall Street Journal, which interviewed some of the sellers taking advantage of the ketchup crisis. Like Indianapolis woman who sold off 20 packets for $8, and a man from Illinois that tried selling single packets for $4 each. There's a shortage. Don't try to lowball me. I know what I've got, said one person. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we get a question of the day, put it on Facebook, put it on Twitter, get your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's thought of the day is as follows. What's your thoughts on if fairies or gnomes exist? Let's start off with Dirty Filth. I believe I've seen a fairy once. That being said, are you trying to incur the wrath of the gnome, Dave? Not at all, Dirty Filth. UFO Toronto, the traditional Celtic folklore in Ireland, tells that a lone hawthorn tree growing in the middle of a field is called a fairy or fairy tree. This tree is the gateway or portal between the worlds of the mortals and the world of the fairies. Spookles the cat. If you're going to kill Tinkerbell, man. No, I'm not. John, I found a strange phenomena when I did a bit of research on this years ago. Fairies tend to show up after a person expresses belief in them for a period of time. To me, that's quite compelling because it also ties in with the idea that we create our own reality. Pidge, well, Dave, as I recall, you really dislike gnomes, therefore they exist. It is only logical. I do not dislike gnomes anymore. I don't. I like the gnomes. I am one with the gnomes. I do have a fairy that resides above the throne in my bathroom, next to the unicorn head. Yes, unicorns exist too. Captain Gnosis. Truth in everything, only seen through different colored glasses. Starman. In my case, it's leprechauns. AC. Respect the Seelie and the unseelie courts. Joseph, otherwise known as Jurassic Joey in our YouTube chat. I'm sorry and no offense to anyone, but I believe more in Bigfoot than fairies and gnomes at this point. That can change, but not today. Ronnie, of course they do, Dave. Slavik, according to advanced yogis who've experienced the astral plane and gone back here to communicate their findings, is that fairies and gnomes and other folk type of creatures exist in that world. All people who take psychoactive shrooms see them, so there is a case. Jeremy, 100% they exist. It's the only explanation for my missing socks from the dryer. Arturo, all the myths and tales from all the creatures will have to be revisited if this pimple of transparency of the phenomenon ever pops. Call Dr. Pimple Popper for that one. Elf, they're flying the craft. Sasquatch Sean, maybe when people were more tied to nature instead of skyscrapers. Good point. Let's see, we get a couple more in here. Jack, something approximating those beings does seem to exist based on fairy credible witnesses. Corey, only in the Hallmark shows that I watch, as in Corey, because he is addicted to that. I want to say a big thank you to everybody participating in the Thought of the Dave. We'll do it all again very soon on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you to Captain Shirk for a wonderful run of SOR Newswire, because that's kind of what we do around here with Shirky Poo. And, of course, to the lovely and talented Varla Ventura. VarlaVentura.net is her website, and we're going to make a strong, strong case for bringing her on once a month, because I know you love her too. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the Space Travelers Club, Facebook, and the Snarkers and Snarkettes, led by Derek at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us. Because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.